The afternoon sun beat down on Main Street in Millerville, Texas, as Sarah Mitchell clutched the foreclosure notice with trembling hands. 3 months since Tom's death, and his family was taking everything: the ranch, the cattle, her home. "You got no claim to Mitchell land," spat Eleanor Mitchell, Tom's mother, her steel-gray hair pulled tight, weathered face twisted with disgust. "Just some saloon girl who caught his eye." Sarah's cheeks burned. Townspeople gathered, pretending to mind their business while listening. Mrs. Henderson stopped sweeping. Old Pete paused his whittling. Children grew quiet. "Tom and I were married proper," Sarah whispered. "Don't speak his name," thundered Robert Mitchell, Tom's brother, stepping from the bank. "A woman who worked in a saloon has no business running a cattle ranch." The crowd murmured agreement. In 1887, Millerville, a woman's past, followed like a shadow. "Tom left everything to me," Sarah said, voice strengthening. "The will—" "There's debts you can't pay," Robert interrupted, snatching the papers. "The bank's transferring everything to us. We're the real Mitchell family." Eleanor stepped closer, pale eyes cold as winter. "Pack your things and get out. There's nothing left for you here." "I worked that ranch for 2 years," Sarah said desperately. "I know every fence post, helped birth those calves." "A woman's got no business doing man's work," Robert sneered. The crowd chuckled. Sarah felt her face burn with humiliation. "Please," she whispered. "I have nowhere to go." Eleanor smiled cruelly. "Should have thought of that before." She shoved hard. Sarah stumbled, falling into the dusty street. Papers scattered like leaves. Dust clung to her dress, her tears. The crowd fell silent. "Get up and get out," Eleanor said coldly. Sarah sat in the dirt, feeling every stare, every judgment. The humiliation was complete. She was nothing. No family, no home, no future. That's when she heard the footsteps. Heavy boots moved through the crowd. Voices quieted. Sarah looked up to see the crowd parting. James Harrison stepped into the circle. The tall, silent rancher moved with quiet purpose. Known throughout the county for keeping to himself, he was a man of few words. Dark hair touched with silver, brown eyes holding depths of kindness and steel. He stopped before Sarah and, without a word, extended his hand. The gesture was simple but revolutionary. By helping her, he was defying the Mitchells, challenging social order, taking her side when no one else would. "What do you think you're doing, Harrison?" Robert demanded. James didn't answer immediately. His hand remained extended, steady as granite. Sarah stared at the offered hand, calloused from work, steady. In it, she saw hope, dignity, a chance. She took it. James pulled her gently to her feet, then stepped beside her, not protectively but as equals. "Problem here?" James asked quietly, his voice carrying despite its low tone. Eleanor's face flushed red. "This is family business, Harrison." James looked from Eleanor to Robert, then at Sarah's tear-streaked face. "Looks like it's about basic human decency," he said simply. The words fell like stones into water. James had just declared that kindness trumped family politics and social hierarchy. Robert's hand moved toward his gun. "Stay out of this, Harrison." James's eyes never wavered. "Any woman thrown into the street becomes my concern, and the concern of any man worth calling himself one." The challenge was unmistakable. James was drawing a line in the dust. "You got somewhere to go tonight, ma'am?" James asked Sarah. She shook her head. "Well then, my ranch has plenty of room. You're welcome as long as you need." The crowd erupted in whispers. Eleanor went white, then red with fury. "A decent man doesn't take in a woman of her reputation." Eleanor spat. James's jaw tightened. "A decent man helps those who need help regardless of what gossips say, and a decent woman doesn't throw another woman into the dirt." The quiet rebuke struck like thunder. Eleanor stepped backward, speechless. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. James gathered the scattered papers, handing them back. "My wagon's by the livery. We can collect your things when you're ready." As they walked away, Sarah felt 20 pairs of eyes following. By tomorrow, the story would be everywhere. The mysterious rancher had taken in the disgraced widow. "I can't pay you," Sarah said softly at the wagon. Didn't ask for payment. Ranch is big enough for 2 people making an honest living. As they left Millerville behind, Sarah felt fear and hope warring in her chest. Behind lay humiliation. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also possibility. The silent rancher had given her more than shelter. He'd given her back her dignity. 3 days later, Millerville still buzzed with speculation. At the H-Bar Ranch, Sarah watched James work with horses through the kitchen window. He'd spoken perhaps 50 words to her total. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Martha Chen, the laundryman's wife, stood holding a basket. "I brought supplies," Martha said softly. "Thought you might be settling in still." Sarah welcomed her gratefully, the first visitor since her arrival. As they shared coffee, Martha unpacked bread, vegetables, and preserves. "People in town are talking," Martha said carefully. "Scandalized?" Sarah suggested. "Some think he's lonely. Others think he's being charitable. A few think he's simply a good man who saw trouble and acted." Through the window, they watched James patiently working with a spirited mare. "He hasn't said much since I arrived," Sarah confessed. "I'm not sure he's comfortable with this arrangement." "Mr. Harrison isn't much for talking," Martha smiled, "but actions speak louder than words." The sound of approaching horses drew their attention. 6 men rode into the yard, Robert Mitchell leading, faces hard and purposeful. James emerged from the corral, moving to intercept them with calm determination. "Mrs. Mitchell," Robert called, "we need words with you." James stepped between the riders and house. Though outnumbered, his presence commanded attention. "You're on my land, Mitchell. State your business." "Our business is with that woman. She's got property that don't belong to her." "Family heirlooms," Robert said smoothly. "Things that belonged to the Mitchell family before she married my brother." It was a lie, and everyone knew it. "Mrs. Mitchell," James called without turning, "you have anything that belongs to the Mitchell family?" Sarah stepped onto the porch, Martha beside her. "Everything I have was mine before marriage or given personally by Tom. I took nothing that wasn't rightfully mine." "She's lying," Eleanor declared, appearing from behind the men. "Tom's mother's jewelry, family papers, silver." "Prove it," James said calmly. "You got a warrant from the sheriff?" "We don't need a warrant to reclaim stolen property," Robert snarled. "You do to set foot in my house. And seeing as you haven't presented evidence anything was stolen, I'd say you're fishing in an empty stream." Robert's face darkened. "Harrison, you're making a big mistake. This woman's bewitched you." James stepped closer to Robert's horse. "Only mistake I see is men threatening a woman on my property. Time for you to leave." "We're not leaving without—" "Yes, you are. Peacefully, or with help from my Winchester, your choice." The threat was delivered so calmly, it took a moment to register. The mounted men exchanged uncertain glances. James Harrison had a reputation as someone you didn't cross. Judge Crawford put a restraining hand on Robert's arm. "Robert, this isn't the place. Let's handle this properly." "Listen to the judge," James advised. For a long moment, tension crackled like electricity. Finally, Robert jerked his horse's reins hard. "This isn't over, Harrison. That woman's got you fooled." "I'm sure the truth will come out," James replied evenly. As the riders left, Eleanor turned to glare at Sarah with pure hatred. "This man will see through your lies eventually, and when he does, you'll have nowhere left to run." After they departed, James looked at Sarah thoughtfully. "You all right?" "Thank you." Again, "No need for thanks. Right is right." "But they'll be back," Sarah said quietly. "Maybe. But next time they'll need legal authority, or stay off my land." Inside, Sarah felt guilt mixing with gratitude. "I should leave. I'm bringing trouble to your peaceful life." James paused, looking directly at her. "Mrs. Mitchell, I've been making my own decisions for a long time. If having you here was a mistake, you wouldn't be here. Don't let them make you believe their hatred is stronger than what's right." The words hung heavy with meaning. James wasn't just offering shelter. He was challenging her to believe in her own worth. That evening, as Sarah prepared dinner, she caught sight of James through the window again. She saw the same quiet confidence, but also a loneliness that matched her own. Perhaps he was simply a good man who did what was right, but maybe he was also someone who understood isolation, standing apart from crowds. As sunset painted the sky brilliant orange, Sarah wondered what it might be like to truly belong somewhere again. For the first time in months, it didn't seem impossible. 2 weeks later, Sheriff Martinez stood on the bank steps before the biggest crowd Millerville had seen all year. A telegram crackled in his hands. "Folks, I've got news from Austin that concerns everyone here. There's been an investigation into land dealings in this county. Someone's been filing false claims, forging documents, stealing property." The crowd pressed closer. Robert Mitchell pushed forward, face pale. "What's this got to do with us, Sheriff?" Martinez's eyes fixed on Robert. "Everything. The investigation started when a clerk noticed irregularities in land transfers. Turned out someone's been creative with paperwork." Eleanor appeared beside Robert, arrogance replaced by fear. "The Texas Land Office has evidence that several property transfers were fraudulent," Martinez continued, "including the foreclosure on the Mitchell Ranch." The crowd erupted. If Sarah's foreclosure was fraudulent, Tom Mitchell's will was legal, Martinez announced. He left everything to his wife, just like she claimed. But someone altered debt records, created false liens, forged documents to make it look like foreclosure. All eyes turned to banker Garrison, face white as paper. "Documentation that's been proven false," Martinez said firmly, "along with 3 other properties foreclosed under suspicious circumstances." And note, the Mitchells hadn't just stolen Sarah's ranch. They'd been systematically defrauding property owners throughout the county. "This is ridiculous," Robert shouted. "You can't prove anything." "The proof comes from Austin, not Mrs. Mitchell. Handwriting experts, document analysis, bank records. The state's case is solid." Martinez pulled out handcuffs. "Robert Mitchell, Eleanor Mitchell, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and theft." Chaos erupted. Eleanor screamed about persecution while Robert backed away, hand toward his gun. "Don't make this harder, son," Martinez warned, weapon drawn. Judge Crawford stepped forward. "Robert, surrender yourself. Running will only make things worse." Slowly, Robert raised his hands. 20 miles away, Sarah was hanging laundry when she saw dust approaching. Sheriff Martinez dismounted heavily. "Mrs. Mitchell, Mr. Harrison, I've got news that's going to change everything." James emerged from the barn, alert. "The kind that proves you were right all along, ma'am. The Mitchells have been arrested for fraud. Your husband's will was legitimate, the debts false, the foreclosure illegal. The ranch is yours." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She staggered, and James steadied her elbow. "Arrested? Both of them? Robert and Eleanor both. They're in Austin awaiting trial. The state's also investigating the banker." Martinez's voice was gentle. "The ranch was always yours, Ma'am." Sarah felt the world spinning. For months, she'd been told she was wrong, grasping at straws. "The state's offering compensation for your suffering. You're going to be just fine. Better than fine." After Martinez left, Sarah and James stood in the yard, silence stretching between them. "I should start packing," Sarah said, though she didn't move. "No hurry. Take your time." But they both knew she couldn't stay indefinitely. With her name cleared and property restored, there was no proper reason for an unmarried woman to remain on a bachelor's ranch. That evening, preparing what might be her last dinner in James's kitchen, Sarah moved slowly, reluctant to finish each task. "Penny, for your thoughts," James said, entering as she stared out the window. "I was thinking how strange life is. A month ago I'd lost everything. Now I have it all back and I should be happy. But you're not." "I am happy. Relieved, vindicated, grateful, but also scared. Going back to that ranch, living alone again, it feels overwhelming." James nodded thoughtfully. "It's more than that," Sarah admitted quietly. "These past weeks here, working alongside you, it's been the most peace I've felt since Tom died. I'm afraid of losing it." The confession hung heavy between them. "Sarah, James's use of her first name stopped her breath. "You're not presuming anything." He moved closer, brown eyes serious. "I've been thinking, too, about how quiet the house will be when you're gone, about eating meals alone, about having no one to talk to in the evenings." Sarah's heart raced. "I know it's too soon," he said quietly. "I know you need time to grieve properly, get your life in order. I know people will talk. But I also know I've never felt more alive than these past weeks, having you here." "What are you asking?" she whispered. "I'm asking if you might consider staying. Not as my guest or charity, but as my partner. In life, in work, in everything that matters. Are you proposing to me?" "I'm proposing we take time to see where this leads. Instead of rushing back to that ranch alone, consider building something new. With me." Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes, tears of possibility, of hope. "People will say I'm marrying you for protection, security. Duh. People will always find something to say. Question is, what do you say?" Sarah looked around the familiar kitchen. She thought about morning coffee together, evening conversations, the way James had defended her without expecting anything. "I say Tom will always have a place in my heart, but that doesn't mean my heart can't grow to include someone else." James's face lit with a transforming smile. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes to taking time, a yes to seeing where this leads, a yes to building something new." James stepped closer, taking her hands. His calloused palms were warm, steady. "We'll do this right. Proper courtship. Time for you to heal. Time to really know each other. I want everyone to see this is real, based on respect and affection, not convenience." The sound of approaching horses drew their attention. A small group led by Martha Chen rode up, faces bright with joy rather than judgment. "Mrs. Mitchell," Martha called, "we heard the wonderful news. You must be so relieved." Voices joined hers. Congratulations, apologies for doubting her, expressions of shame. The people of Millerville, faced with proof of their misjudgment, had come to make amends. "We brought supplies to celebrate," announced Mrs. Henderson. "And we wanted to apologize," added Judge Crawford. "We should have listened from the beginning." As the impromptu celebration began, Sarah marveled at how quickly public opinion shifted. But more importantly, she no longer needed their approval to feel worthy. James had given her something more valuable, her sense of self-worth. Late that evening, sitting on the porch under emerging stars, Sarah asked, "Do you think we're moving too fast?" James considered seriously. "I think life's too short to waste time on what others think is proper. We're both adults who've known loss and loneliness. If we've found something good, why let the calendar dictate when we can embrace it? Besides," he added with a smile, "the good people of Millerville will be too busy gossiping about the Mitchell arrest to pay attention to our courtship." Sarah laughed, a sound of pure joy carrying across the prairie. As they sat under the endless sky, Sarah realized that sometimes the most important journeys began not with grand gestures, but with a simple hand extended to someone who needed help. James had given her his hand when she was in the dust. Now she was ready to take it and build something beautiful together. 6 months later, spring had returned to Texas with wildflowers carpeting the hills. In Millerville, the biggest news was the upcoming wedding of Sarah Mitchell and James Harrison. The engagement had been announced after a proper 3-month courtship that satisfied even traditional residents. They'd attended church together, participated in community events, conducted themselves with such propriety that even Mrs. Abernathy declared their relationship suitable. Now, on a bright May morning, the entire population seemed gathered at the small white church. Sarah stood behind the altar, adjusting her simple ivory silk dress with trembling fingers. Martha Chen bustled around, securing wildflowers in her auburn hair. "You look radiant," Martha said warmly. "I'm the lucky one," Sarah replied, voice soft with wonder. Young Lucy Henderson appeared with a small wooden box. "Mr. Harrison sent this." Inside lay a simple gold locket engraved with intertwined S and J. When opened, it revealed a photograph of them both smiling at the county fair. He wanted you to know this is just the beginning of the beautiful things you'll build together, Lucy recited. Meanwhile, James stood at the altar with Sheriff Martinez as best man. Nervous? Martinez asked. Eager, James corrected, eyes fixed on the back door. Been waiting my whole life for this. The church doors opened. Sarah appeared, radiant in ivory, with wildflowers in her hair. She walked slowly down the aisle, eyes fixed on James's face, seeing wonder and joy that matched her own. At the halfway point, Martha stepped from her seat and offered her arm, a spontaneous symbol of community support. When they reached the altar, James stepped forward. "You're beautiful," he said softly. "So are you," she replied with a smile that lit the church. Now Pastor Williams cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved, we gather to join James Harrison and Sarah Mitchell in matrimony. This is not a decision made lightly, but one born of deep respect, genuine affection, and shared vision." As the ceremony proceeded, Sarah thought about the journey from humiliation in Main Street's dust to standing here as a bride, surrounded by friends. "James, do you take Sarah to be your wife, to have and to hold in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, until death do you part?" "I do," James said firmly. "And I promise to be not just her husband, but her partner in all things, her equal in all decisions, and her strongest supporter in all endeavors." The addition brought murmurs of approval. Marriage as equal partnership was still revolutionary in 1887. "Sarah, do you take James to be your husband, to have and to hold, in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, until death do you part?" "I do," Sarah said clearly. "And I promise to bring not just my love, but my strength, my mind, and my determination to build something beautiful together." As they exchanged rings James had crafted himself, Sarah felt profound rightness. This wasn't just a wedding, it was recognition of a partnership that had been growing for months. "By the power vested in me by the state of Texas, I now pronounce you husband and wife. James, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was gentle, respectful, but filled with promise. The church erupted in cheers as the couple walked back down the aisle, hand in hand. Outside, the entire town had turned out. Tables laden with food stretched across the churchyard, and someone produced a fiddle for dancing. "Speech! Speech!" called old Pete. James looked questioningly at Sarah, who nodded. The crowd quieted. "Most of you know I'm not much for speeches," James began, drawing chuckles, "but I've got something to say today." He paused, looking around at familiar faces. 6 months ago, many of you watched my wife get knocked down in our Main Street's dust. Some turned away, some whispered, but few stepped forward to help. I don't say that to shame anyone. We all make choices we're not proud of. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, but I want you to know that watching Sarah get back up, fight for truth, rebuild her life with grace and dignity, it taught me about real strength. Standing here married to the strongest person I've ever known, I realize the best things sometimes come from the worst moments. He turned to Sarah, eyes soft with love. "My wife didn't need me to rescue her. She rescued herself. I just had the good sense to offer my hand when she was ready to get back up." Thunderous applause followed, genuine and heartfelt. As the celebration continued, Martha hugged Sarah tightly. "I'm so happy for you both. You deserve every bit of joy coming to you." Sheriff Martinez clapped James's shoulder. "Never seen a man look so happy to give up bachelor freedom." "Not giving it up," James replied, "trading it for something better." Even Mrs. Abernathy approached with apparent warmth. "Mrs. Harrison, I owe you an apology. I judged you unfairly and was wrong. I hope you'll forgive an old woman's prejudices." Sarah took the offered hand graciously. "We all make mistakes. What matters is how we learn from them." A sunset painted the sky, brilliant orange and pink. The celebration wound down. James and Sarah stood on church steps watching friends pack up and head home. "Any regrets?" James asked softly, arm around his new wife's waist. Sarah leaned against his warmth, feeling more content than she'd imagined possible. Only that it took so long to find this, to find you. Everything in its own time, James said philosophically. We both needed to become who we were meant to be before we could build this together. They walked toward the wagon that would take them home. Not to either ranch, but to the new house they'd built together on land between their properties. A symbol of their partnership, neither his nor hers, but truly theirs. As they drove through gathering dusk, Sarah thought about the changes that brought her to this moment. Tom's death had shattered her world. The Mitchells' cruelty had stripped away security and dignity, but somehow, from those ashes, something beautiful had grown. "What are you thinking about?" James asked. "How strange life is. If the Mitchells hadn't been so cruel, you might never have stepped forward. We might never have found each other. I'd like to think we would have found our way eventually. Good people have a way of recognizing each other. Maybe. But there's something to be said for seeing someone at their worst and choosing to help anyway. It reveals character." They reached their new home as first stars appeared. James helped Sarah down, and together they stood looking at the house they'd built, physical manifestation of their partnership and faith in the future. "Ready to start our new life, Mrs. Harrison?" James asked, offering his arm. "I've been ready since the day you offered me your hand," Sarah replied. Walking up the path to their door, Sarah reflected on the journey that brought them here. She'd learned that true strength wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up and refusing to let setbacks define you. Real love wasn't about being rescued. It was about choosing to build something together, day by day. Most importantly, she'd realized that sometimes the worst moments were just the universe's way of clearing space for something better to grow. The house welcomed them with warm lamplight. Inside, everything was ready. Furniture chosen together, books collected, spaces designed for the life they planned to share. "Home," Sarah said softly. "Home," James agreed, and in his voice she heard all the promise of years to come. As they crossed the threshold together, hand in hand, Sarah knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as equal partners in the beautiful life they were beginning to build. Outside, the prairie wind carried wildflower scents and new grass, and Millerville's lights twinkled like earthbound stars. It was a perfect night to begin forever. The autumn of 1892 found the Harrison Ranch prospering beyond expectations. Sarah Harrison stood on their porch, watching James work with their prize stallion. At 32, she'd grown into her role as both rancher and community leader with grace. Martha Chen arrived with her children and news of the Harvest Festival planning. The celebration had become an annual tradition, largely organized by Sarah and drawing visitors from across the county. Sheriff Martinez brought different news. Robert Mitchell had died in prison. The crimes had been proven, and he'd served 3 years before pneumonia claimed him. Eleanor had died during his second year, broken by shame. "Can't say I'm sorry," Sarah said quietly. "But I can't say I'm glad either. Such waste." James squeezed her hand. "Some people choose bitterness over decency. Nothing we could have done. The important thing," Martinez said, "is how their victims recovered. You've built something real here." That evening on their porch, Sarah reflected on 5 good years. The ranch employed 15 workers and supported dozens of families. She'd established a school for workers' children. James had pioneered crop rotation methods that increased regional yields. Their marriage had become a model for other couples. Decisions made together, responsibilities shared by skill rather than gender, mutual respect that made even traditional residents reconsider assumptions about marital roles. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been?" Sarah asked. "Sometimes, but I always conclude we found each other when we were ready to appreciate what we'd found. Easier circumstances might have led to easier choices, but not necessarily better ones." A distressed young rider approached, Pete Crawford, whose wife was having trouble in childbirth. Dr. Williams was in Austin, and Sarah had developed a reputation as skilled midwife and healer. Within minutes, they were racing through darkness toward the Crawford Ranch. The next hours passed in careful examination and medical intervention. As dawn broke, a healthy baby's cry filled the house. "A son," Sarah announced with satisfaction. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and perfect lungs. Driving home in morning light, James looked at his wife with renewed admiration. "Ever think about studying medicine formally? There's a women's medical college in Baltimore now." Sarah considered seriously. "Would you mind being apart that long? I'd miss you terribly, but I'd be proud to have a doctor for a wife. This community needs real medical training." And the idea took root over following weeks. She was 32, still young enough for training, and their ranch successful enough to survive her temporary absence. The decision was made on a crisp October morning as they rode property lines. They'd stopped by the creek where James first proposed. "I want to do it," Sarah said suddenly. "Study medicine properly, return as a real doctor." When would you start?" "Next fall. That gives us a year to prepare, and I'd be back for spring carving 3 years from now." "You realize having Dr. Sarah Harrison as a wife will make me even more of a curiosity." Sarah laughed. "Poor man, married to a woman with ambitions. However will you survive the scandal?" "I'll manage. Might even be proud of it." As they prepared to return home, Sarah took one last look around their property. Land joined together, home built, community strengthened. In 3 years, she'd return as a changed person with new skills to contribute, but the foundation would remain. Partnership built on mutual respect, love grown from friendship and shared trials, commitment to building something beautiful together. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Harrison?" "Always," Sarah replied, taking his offered hand. Riding toward their house, Sarah reflected on the remarkable journey. She'd learned that strength wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up. True love wasn't about being rescued. It was about choosing to build something together. Most importantly, she'd realized that sometimes the worst moments were just the universe clearing space for something better to grow. The sun climbed higher in autumn sky, warming their faces as they rode toward home. Behind them, tracks would fade with the next rain. But ahead lay a future bright with possibility, built on the solid foundation of partnership, respect, and love. At 32, soon-to-be Dr. Sarah Harrison had learned that the most beautiful things often grew from the most difficult circumstances. Sitting tall beside the man who'd first offered his hand when she needed it most, she knew without doubt that the best was yet to come. The end.